This is Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. Pushing you to year-on-year progression. With your host, Ross McKinley.
Yo, Ross McKinley, Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. A very special guest. The first podcast I was ever had the honor of being asked to be on, was this man right here, the legendary Coach Cuthbert, Steve Cuthbert. Steve, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. It feels weird being a guest on. I feel like I should be like doing my hair or doing something like that. I
don't know. So me and Steve have known each other for a long time. We were on the same university course back in the day, weren't we? And then Steve's also a coach, and we've kind of, in some respects, grown up alongside, or certainly watched our careers kind of grow in parallel. And Steve's got a very, very successful podcast himself. He's a great coach. He works at Primal Gym in Leeds, as well as doing his own stuff online, and helped hundreds of people, just like me, more down of a powerlifting route. But in today's episode, I'm going to talk about consistency, because this guy right here is one of the fucking most consistent people that I know. Training, powerlifting, coaching. It's going to be fucking class. So, Steve, for people who don't know you, a little bit about yourself. How did you get into training? Who, what, why?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that, because I think we kind of had seen each other at uni and then gone and done different things. And then obviously I started working with Matt, and then, asked you on the podcast. So it's good to see that, different directions, but similar sort of backgrounds, if you like. So like Ross said, did sport and exercise science at uni. And then I was playing rugby, sort of fell into coaching, came back from Australia, was skint, needed some money, started doing boot camps. I didn't even do training inside for about a year. And then gradually, when I stopped playing as much rugby, a guy called Chris Kershaw, who I worked with, just went, here you go, here's a 12-week powerlifting program. I'd always been interested in strength training. I had visions of being a strength and conditioning coach and working with rugby teams and all those sort of things. Whereas actually, getting involved in powerlifting, getting people stronger, competing myself, always watching Strongman at Christmas and all that sort of stuff. Kind of got the powerlifting bug, if you like. And then from being quite broad and trying my hand at different things at coaching, just got a little bit more specific in terms of strength training. And that's not necessarily just powerlifting, but just getting people stronger, across the board, as well as tying that into, building a little bit of muscle, losing a little bit of fat. But yeah, the majority of the stuff that I do is the strength training side of things. And then the building off that was obviously the podcast, which, to be honest with you, started off with just me on my phone, thinking it would be cool to be like, yeah, if you ask me a question, I'll answer it. And yeah, it's kind of grown into something a lot bigger than what I expected, really.
What made you, mate, we're going to get on to the podcast in a minute, but particularly with the training, what kind of made you get into coaching? Is it, and what, I always like ask everyone, what's your, to cliches, but what's your why? But with your coaching at the minute, would you say, would you class yourself as more of an S&C coach, helping athletes? Would you say it's more general population now? And is that kind of where you want to see yourself moving forward? Is that your main focus now?
Yeah, I'd probably say, sitting on the fence. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I don't have a massive bank of elite level powerlifters. I've got people that are competing, but they're probably maybe intermediates. They've got a couple of competitions on the belt. But then I'm training complete newbies who are like, do you know what? I want to get a little bit stronger, mainly to increase their confidence. Yeah. And in all honesty, when I started playing rugby, I started off on the wing, quite a skinny kid. Yeah. And, came up against bigger lads who was just thinking, Jesus Christ.
I can't imagine you skinny, Steve. I can't imagine that now.
I used to be quicker as well. I used to be quicker. But the physical side of rugby, I always enjoyed. I enjoyed getting stuck in. So I have memories of my coach shouting at me, being like, get out on the wing. You don't need to be in like the rucks and the mauls and that sort of stuff. And, getting involved in the forwards and, looking at like one of my favourite players growing up watching was a guy called Alassana Tuolangi, and he was a massive Samoan, and he just used to bulldozer people out of the way. And then you watch some of their training and get a little bit of an insight. and seeing other people, you know, men or women, who aren't that confident, because I think strength, this might be a little bit more of like we might be getting quite philosophical here, but I think strength isn't just performance in the gym. I think it increases your confidence. If you feel as though you're stronger, if you feel as though you've got a little bit more muscle, that's just not confidence in the gym of, yeah, I can lift that. It's a case of, you know, how you carry yourself outside is good. And I think as much as I love seeing people get PBs, how they, you know, change as a person is like, because I saw that change in me. You know, I remember, if you ever speak to my coach, I used to stand, and before I tackle, I'll have my hand on my face rather than having my hands ready, because probably part of it was nervous. Whereas as I got stronger, you know, got training in the gym, not only did it help my rugby, but it helped my confidence. And then because, you know, I am quite competitive, having powerlifting, you know, it's a case of like, right, you know, I liking the fact of hitting those numbers, and right, this is what I'm gonna hit next. So hopefully I answered that question. But yeah, you know, getting people stronger, but also increasing their, you know, confidence and building them up as a person. And then alongside that, I started doing an internship with the strength guys. So that's a company who I've got a massive amount of respect for. The guy who runs that, Jason Tremblay, and there's a guy called Alfred Jong, as well as, you know, a load of other coaches. They've set the standard of, you know, they've got world champions, national champions, and doing the internship with them to, you know, have access to a little bit more of a higher level of powerlifters, if you like, the attention to detail. And you'll know, you know, with the muscle building, the hypertrophy side of things, there's a lot of difference between being like, yeah, I just follow this program, compared to, no, this is a professional way of doing it. Like this is what I'm about, which has been a really good experience in terms of seeing how they operate and why they get the results that they do. It's not just down to luck. It's they've got a system in place. So hopefully, you know, can build up that side of things. But yeah, probably somewhere in the middle, I'd say.
Oof, I've got so many good questions for you, Steve. Off the back of that, I don't know where to go next. I think we'll start with a podcast, because I think one of the main reasons I want to get, like I mentioned before, how consistent you are with everything. And I think what fascinates me about you, I've known you a long time, but genuinely is how consistent you are. Baffles us. Like when I look at the podcast, the amount of episodes he's put out. But then I also think that's reflected in your training and everything else as well. And I think generally your life and your coaching stuff. But with the podcast, just to give people an overview of why you should listen to fucking Steve now, because he has spoke to some of, I am not joking, the fucking best minds in the strength and conditioning industry, the training industry as a whole. Dan, John, I've wrote down a list of names here. I'm going to bore people, but if you know who any of these are, you'll be like, oh shit. So Dan, John, Dave Tate, Mike Israel, John Meadows, what a fucking legend. Jordan Sire, Jordan Shallows, Christian Thibodeau, Stuart McGill, Eric Helms, Tony Gentlecourt, Jim Wendt, fucking loads of people. It's incredible. 179 episodes. 179 episodes. That is a fucking slog, that, mate. And not only that, you speak... Honestly, I looked through before again. I'm fortunate enough to have been on it a couple of times, but some of the names there, for anyone who knows anything about training, but particularly more coaching, I'm not talking necessarily... I know you have had some powerlifting athletes on who probably you look up to, but certainly for me, when I'm looking at it, whether it's S&C, powerlifting, bodybuilding coaches, when I looked at the list of names, I went through your YouTube earlier, I was like, fuck me, Steve must know some good stuff now, like by this time. So you've got the benefits of probably you learning a lot from those people, and then obviously you're getting even better at being a host as well. But what have you learned from that, mate, and how and why do you think you've been able to be so consistent with it? So what's your biggest lessons, and then what's the reason behind the consistency is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I look at how many episodes, I think, wow, that's all right. Then I've had 179 downloads. That's all right. No, part of it is, you know, I enjoy it on a selfish note, being able to speak to people like that. You do pick things up, you know, and I think the biggest lesson that I've learned from all that I've spoken, I know we spoke a little bit before we were recording there, and don't get me wrong, you know, there's been some podcasts that I thought at the time would be really popular, but how they've come across is me asking questions and then quite a robotic answer back. Yeah. But more often than not, what local coaches, if you like, compared to people who have got a bigger name, a bigger following. They put the same message across. It's just someone's got 100,000 followers compared to maybe 1,000 followers. The content and quality is still the same. The only difference is that, you know, people have got a bigger following. And I think sometimes with that, with anything, sometimes the people who shout the loudest aren't necessarily the ones that you should be listening to. But the message, you know, especially with people who, you know, have sort of like mastered their coaching skill, if you like Eric Helms, being on loads of podcasts.
Yeah,
he said similar things to what you have said on the podcast. Do you know what I mean? Very similar, same as like Mike Israel. Nutrition, you know, we both know Chris Lowe. Yeah, Chris Lowe's awesome at nutrition and the results that he gets. But then speaking with, you know, other people in the nutrition field, they're still saying the same things. They're still getting the knowledge, and you know, there's common people who people listen to. Yeah. Like I say, it's just that audience. But then also, I think, you know, how they put things across, because sometimes I always feel as though, right, well, why isn't this person understanding what I'm saying? Why isn't it, you know, why aren't they getting what I'm trying? Why aren't I getting the best out of them? And probably the best person, like anybody who, in terms of coaching, can use a dildo as an analogy is good in my books. Mike Israel, right? He went on a tangent about like a coach's toolbox, and he was like, a dildo's a tool, but we don't need to use that all the time. We need to use that. And then, yeah, he's like putting things across and using analogies and changing things around to get the best out of your clients. Yeah, is that's what's going to build up your reputation. You know, and just being able to, you know, we don't always have to be serious and be like, oh yeah, well, I read this study and this said this. Like, you know, we're all working with real world people, and it's just how we put ourselves across.
Yeah, I think that ability to make it simple for your clients, and I think the better that the people are at that, at making it fun or making it something that they remember, whether it's through a little analogy or something where people think it's funny, or that at least it just breaks it down, and then you remember that phrase rather than like the process behind muscle protein synthesis or the process behind like the mechanisms of hypertrophy. You realize that actually it's about training hard, or it's just eat protein or whatever it is. And you explain, I always used to say about people about the quality of the protein in terms of leucine, and being like having filling the car up with fuel, but you need the quality of the protein to kind of start the ignition and stuff, and explaining that to people. And it's like, you know, you can eat a lot of protein, but if it's shit quality or it's coming from a bagel, you can't start your car. You need the key, you need the leucine as the main stimulator of MPS. Or there's loads, isn't there? But I think something that I think for you as well, when you're talking to that many people, it's great to hear these little stories, because that's a lot of the time what coaching is, which I don't think people realize. It's like you're just trying to make someone understand something, and then they go away and fucking do it, or they don't. And the better stories you have, the more clients I certainly work with across the 28 days and the 12 weeks, gives us like a little story from each group about someone who maybe's had a hard time, or I said last night on a video, I was like, I've coached people with 10 kids. I haven't, but you know, there's the idea of like the whole thing of like, because what normally happens is someone has a story that they tell themselves about why they can't do something or whatever. So there's both stories to explain a scientific or physiological point of view, but then also the ones that just breaks down a barrier for someone and say, actually, here's a story about this person who worked 12 hours, done night shift, but still done the 28-day challenge and got results. For you and your powerlifting, might be someone who still goes to a competition and hits PBs. And that's why it's so good, isn't it? What do you think, mate, in terms of if you had to pick one lesson from all those guests, not necessarily from one person, I think what would you say would be the one biggest lesson in terms of, we'll go one for training, one for nutrition, and one for life? Put you on the spot.
Ooh. In terms of
first thing comes into your head.
In terms of training / coaching, just be comfortable. Be comfortable in the terms of, because like when you first start coaching, you want to do everything and you think, oh, am I doing this the right thing? Whereas actually, like, there's a reason, you know, if people are coming and working with you, they want to get something out of you. But being comfortable in terms of being like, do you know what? I've had success with 100+ clients in the past. I know what I'm doing. We just need to follow this process, and then it's just matching that system, that process to the person that's in front of you.
Yeah.
In terms of nutrition, like it doesn't matter wherever we go with it. We still need to hit the basics. Like nutrition can be as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. I like to keep it dead simple. Sometimes, conversations that I've had with people, maybe I make it too simple. But as long as we have those foundations, those fundamentals, you aren't really going too far wrong. And then in terms of life, like, yeah, you know me by now. That's why I stuck with the name Strength Trap. Just enjoy it. It's not a case of like, yeah, we don't have to be like, oh, well, yeah, you believe in this, so me and you can't be friends. We can't talk to you. Just enjoy it. Like, the fact I always joke with, especially when people come in from work and they've had a stressful day at work, like lawyers or doctors and all that sort of stuff. And I'm stood there and I'm thinking, I literally rock up to work in shorts. Like, I get to do podcasts like this. I get to, write programs and chat to people about stuff that I enjoy. Because ultimately, everyone gets involved, whether it's getting stronger, getting shredded, or getting fitter. Everyone starts doing it because they enjoy it. No one thinks like, I know what will really piss me off. I'm going to start training. That'll be something horrible. Whereas it's like, having training partners. You don't go training and be like, oh, I don't want to go see him or see her. It's like, we're going to absolutely smash this. And then afterwards, you're joking. Yeah, it might be hard during the session, but then afterwards you can be like, let's go grab some food. Let's go. And then it's the build them off that. And that's the biggest thing. And, for all the episodes that I've done, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, enjoy it, go on tangents, talk about other stuff, because, that's why we all started onto it. If you ever dislike or stop enjoying something, I've always said, well, I'm not going to do it. If I ever stop enjoying powerlifting, I'll do something else. If I and then just change it around. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is enjoyment. So yeah, that's my training, nutrition, and life lessons.
Well, the last one when you touched on it there, powerlifting, that's perfect. I've literally wrote down here, you are a strong cunt. Discuss. So talk us through, for those who don't know powerlifting, mate, just talk us through basically what you do first and foremost. So what the lifts are, how it works, and then what you've done. Because I think as coaches sometimes, well, certainly I think it's not great to just talk to your clients about yourself and be like, oh, this is what I do. And you see that a lot in gyms. But I think on a podcast or on this sort of on the wider thing on social media, showing what you do sometimes gives you a little bit of authority. So this is your chance, Steve. Sell us what are you fucking lifting. So talk it through me, powerlifting. What's the lift? What is it? And then what do you do? Why do you love it?
So powerlifting is squat, bench, and deadlift. On a competition day, you get three attempts of each, so it's 9 minutes. For a long day of lifting, you only actually do 9 minutes of work. That's probably quite wide. As a forward, 9 minutes of work is about as much as I can do. Yeah. And then for squat, obviously you got to squat down to a certain depth. Bench, you've got to pause on your chest. Deadlift, you've just got to get it up. You just can't. A little bit like, even though Awesome Eddie Hall lifted 500 kilos, you can't do like a strongman hitch and like grind up your legs. It's got to be move all in a straight line. Yeah. And then obviously there's commands from the referees, and then from regionals to British to Europeans to worlds, there's obviously like qualifying totals that you want to get to, and then you know a little bit more competitive against other people. So I've been powerlifting for maybe about five years. Yeah. Started off, like I said before, just that 12-week program and getting involved in that. And then because obviously for anyone listening who has done any training before, or even coaches listening, you'll probably find that obviously people see big gains relatively quickly. So like the kilos were just going onto the bar, which was awesome. And then it got to a point where it was like, right, okay, I need to have a look. So how do I take it to like that next level, if you like? So I tried out with a couple of different coaches. I've been with my coach for the last maybe 2 years. So I've been able to compete at the British, lifting the heaviest that I've ever lifted. And then it's a case of it's at that point now where, before it was just a case of going to the British and, just showing up, just being there, having that experience. Mm-hmm. Whereas now on a regional level, I'm maybe potentially challenging a little bit more. And then on the British, it's like, right, how do I start climbing up those rankings? And why I like it is, you can see that progress. If you lift, 100 kilos one week and 110, you've always got something to aim for. And at the start, I'd pick weights of, what are the markers that I want to hit for. And then it gets to a point where, things sound a lot cooler in pounds. So it's like, right, I want to hit a 600 pound, a 700 pound. Because in kilos, it doesn't sound as good. And as well, coming from like, I know Ross from playing like having a footballing background, the team side of things is very much like us against them. Whereas from, one of the best things was at the English Championships a couple of years ago, the guy who held the British deadlift record was spotting. He wasn't competing that day. And then somebody was going to break his deadlift record. So it's like, there's nothing you can do about it because he was spotting. And afterwards, they shook hands, and the guy who held the record was cheering him on because everybody wants to see each other doing better, even if it's their first competition, and they've never bench pressed 100 kilos, which is like, a good marker for beginners, if you like. And everybody's wanting to see them do well, and it's an environment which I've never experienced before, and the adrenaline from it, is good. And like I say, catching that powerlifting bug is it's infectious, and you start speaking to other people and be like, right, what have you done, and then working with your coach and seeing how it's progressing from there. It's not for everybody. Some people, in terms of strength training, like I've always said, after every powerlifting competition, because I'm battered and knackered, I always say I'm going to do strongman because that looks cooler. But I've had clients that have done strongman competitions who are they still get that same effect because, it's cool to be able to pull a truck or do something like that. It's impressive, and you can, put it out there and be like, look what I did, look what I lifted.
You've got to go what you enjoy, aren't you? I think that I've only ever been to one. I've done a little bit of Olympic weightlifting when I was at uni, and the competitions there were very much what you say is when I used to compete then. I used to always miss weight. Actually, I used to always be trying to get like 80. I can't remember. It was maybe 84 kilos, or like I can't remember. It was maybe 80, and I was like always fucking touch and go. I used to have to like fucking go in a sweatsuit the day of or the day before to try to lose the last little bit. But I remember then the atmosphere was really good, and like you say, everyone wants everyone to do well. And also, I went and watched one of my friends, Owen, compete in a powerlifting competition a few years ago. This is a long time ago when I had my gym, and a lot of the lads from the gym went, and it was like you said, I couldn't believe how happy everyone was for everyone. Like obviously, like in football and that or any sport, I'm like, fuck you, I'm gonna beat you, or like whatever, or like everyone's like so competitive. And in powerlifting, genuinely, for anyone that's interested in doing it, if you are, get in touch with Steve, or I would always suggest like work with a coach. Definitely helps, but like have confidence in the fact that actually when you get there, it's a very, very welcoming environment, and I think that's why a lot of people do it. I think that's why stuff. Bit of a different thing, but I think that's why CrossFit is so popular now as well, because it's not just the time in the gym. It's like what you said with your training partner, having food after, whatever else. But a lot of this stuff now, people seem to be realizing that like with the relationships around it and the community and stuff, they can build a bigger, better business. And I think that's what bodybuilding in a lot of times is sometimes missing. And that's certainly what I'm trying to do with Aesthetically Trained, is give the lads in the inner circle and everything that we do a community alongside it where people are supporting each other, because bodybuilding and getting in shape and getting up and doing your cardio and all that shit can be a very lonely venture a lot of the time. And certainly bodybuilding events, the crack's usually terrible because it's normally like, not going to say it's full of horrible people, but it's normally full of like, I don't know. It's not normally, I certainly don't think it's always as, maybe it's because of the nature of it. Like, because it's like people trying to look good. I think people are very reluctant to be like, I don't know, sometimes. But yeah. In terms of your lift, Steve, tell me. Come on, that's what everyone's thinking is, right, that's all very well and good, mate, but what do you actually... So squat, bench, deadlift, what's your PBs?
So I lifted the most I had done. I competed 14 weeks ago, so I've actually got the British, depending on when this goes out, I've got the British the first weekend in September, so I needed to hit the qualifying total for that. and I had to, for the numbers that I wanted to hit, I had to rein it back a little bit, because 2 weeks before the competition, a couple of weeks ago, I actually had a car crash. So my back and my shoulder wasn't very good.
Right.
So I squatted 265, which is the most I've squatted. Benched 147 and a half, not very good at bench. And then deadlifted 272 and a half. I actually failed 272 and a half. The last competition that I did before, the world went to pot was at the British in 2019.
Yeah.
And as I lifted it, I tore a callus off my thumb. So I was just like, I don't want to hold on to this anymore. So that was a little bit of a confidence boost. Originally I wasn't going to compete a couple of weeks ago. I spoke with my coach and I was like, no, I still want to get a qualifying total. So hopefully, because it's my last week of training, openers next week, compete next Sunday afternoon.
Class.
We'll be able to nudge those up a little bit. So that's a roundabout where I am.
What targets have you got for then? Have you got any numbers in your head?
My target for last year was to deadlift 300, and when we went into lockdown, or deadlift 3 over 100 would be even better. My estimated max was 299, right. And then I got it up to 300. My estimated max, and then we went into lockdown again. So hopefully come next week, I'll take 300 down, hopefully. Don't know.
Big deadlift that in a 300 kilo deadlift.
It's kind of one of those things where it's like it's that next club, if you like, which would be pretty cool. Bench anything over 150 would be pretty good. I think I remember having a conversation with you before about this. I'm not known for my my bench pressing, so we'll skim over that. And then squat. I think 270 plus is
squat's massive.
Is there?
I think squat's more impressive for me. I mean, the gym I used to train at in Newcastle McVicar is legendary gym, full of fucking big blokes. Mint place to train. Like, again, that had a community like I was talking about earlier, and all of them were just, it was class. And I think that a lot of them in there, or certainly what I've probably seen more people pull 300 deadlift in that gym than any other place I've been, but they weren't powerlifters, just bodybuilders full of gear, but they trained really hard and they were all massive. I think to squat 260 plus for me is more impressive than a 300 kilo deadlift.
Yeah.
That's just my own opinion, just based off what I've seen people doing. What's 260? Is that 6 plates a side or something? Is it 6 a side?
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, looking at some of the guys who are like, I'm kind of trying to keep pace with. That's sort of like the marker that I need to do. One of the most, when I was talking about that deadlift record, the most impressive thing about that, it was a guy called Dave Richardson, and he pulled it not wearing a belt. So in terms of like raw, that's as raw as you can get. For squat, it's kind of, that's just one of the foundation movements. Like I've always enjoyed squatting, and it's been it's taken a little bit of time to work on, adjusting my stance and my grip on the bar, but I just think any of those apart from bench press, which doesn't really impress me, squats and deadlifts is to see some of the weights that shifted from there is pretty good. And hopefully, it's one of those things where I always think, I'm going to have a little bit of breather from powerlifting, but then I'm like, oh, well, if I just get a few extra kilos, I could have a 600 or 700 pound or whatever it is. But we'll see how it goes, and hopefully I can add a few more kilos on there.
There's some things I've always wanted to do training wise, and I think benching, like, not that I'm fucking anywhere near these, but like I think a 160 bench is pretty big, or a 140 bench is pretty good as well. But I've done that before. But a 160 bench, I think, is pretty big. 300 kilo deadlift, that's a proper, if you've done a 300 kilo deadlift, that's like a proper, like, fucking hell, that's big. In a 220 squat, I think 5 plates a side on a squat, for anyone to do that, and I'd like to be able to do that and rep it, would be maybe it's one day, Steve. You know what I mean? But I enjoy.
No, we'll get that session in.
Too much. I enjoy just training like a bodybuilder too much at the minute.
We'll get it there. But I think it's important to have some of because like again, this might be a little bit of a tangent. When you talk about like strength standards, there was something on there that people say you have to deadlift 2 times body weight, do this or do that. And I think sometimes having your own strength standards in your own head is to be like, yeah, I'm pretty, I'm pretty happy about that. And the main thing for that is everyone always thinks. Like the amount of times I've had people in there, because like when I tore that callus off my thumb and doing deadlifts, it was all in my head. My grip wasn't an issue. It's just I tore that callus. Whereas I think just that mindset thing of, right, if you're going in and you're doing, a heavy session, just have that mindset of, yeah, you do it because you enjoy it. But I think you just need that little bit of, I don't know. Yeah, that little bit of grit about you to be like, right, this is because you only have to do it for powerlifting, you only have to do it for 1 rep. Yeah. And then after that, you can be however you want and enjoy however you want. Whereas that's how you
I think to touch on there as well, sorry to interrupt you, I think which I just kind of realized there myself is what works for you. And people might think, oh, powerlifting, bodybuilding, what I do, getting people in shape transformation is very different. But actually, if you look at the common themes, you've got to be very consistent, which we've fucking hell, that's the word of this episode for sure. But also it's deadlines and pressure. So what Steve's talking about there is by having a competition and having a deadline, he has to do the sessions, whether he feels like it or not. He's not waiting to be motivated. He's going in, he's got a plan, he's working with a coach, he knows what he's doing. But then it gives him that extra push so that, like you said there, he's got to have a little bit of grip because he's got the pressure of, like in football, it'll be a match day. For bodybuilding, it's the competition. For my lads that I coach, it's the photo shoot, it's the photos going on Facebook or whatever it is. For you listening, it might be a holiday, it might be a wedding. But having those deadlines and pressure is something I always go back to. And you might not instantly recognize what it is in another sport or in someone else's journey, but there's always something there that pushes them to get them through the times when they don't want to do it. Classmate. For your coaching, Steve, next question. Your coaching, what would you say? You've been coaching fucking years. What would you say your main lessons are from the gym floor? So you're experiencing primal and both yourself. So what, for the people listening, what would your tips be around sort of maybe he's working with a PT, but then also maybe he's training on their own? What would you advise?
I think with that, don't be frightened to ask questions, and don't be frightened to if you don't have all the answers or you're struggling to find out, because especially, I was thinking about this before we chatted, and when you first started, you want to be like, wow, I've just come out of uni, or whilst you're in uni coaching, I want to show all this to let you know how what I've learned, and thinking all the answers, and then you go somewhere else, and then you realize, oh yeah, actually, like there's that guy over there who's been doing it a little bit longer than me, and he's smashing it out the park, and only half of my clients are getting results. And then just having that, right, if you don't have the answers, go and ask other people. That's why I set up the podcast. I know you've mentioned about some of the seminars that you've been to, and going out and finding and having learning from other people, rather than being like, oh well, I'm going to keep what I know, and then I'm not going to be able to speak to anyone or share anything with anyone. It's all about building that network, maybe from a coach's point of view. From me, in terms of working with the coaches that I've worked with, there's been some that I've been like, it doesn't really click. If you are looking to work with anyone, or depending on what your goals are, find someone who clicks with you, find someone who you trust. I think is the biggest thing, because if they're, and ask them questions on the flip side of it, from coaches trying to learn more, from clients, ask them questions, because I quite like being asked questions. I'm sure you're in a circle as well. When lads are asking questions, it's like, right, at least they're wanting to know a little bit more. The worst thing is if you sign up to something and just be like, do exactly what they say, and then once you leave, if you don't have that coach there, you have no idea what you're doing. Because like I say, for most of the stuff of, I remember going into some gyms that I've been into, especially at my first powerlifting competition. You see some guys who are lifting, 3 times what I'm lifting. 9 times out of 10, those people, when you walk into that gym, there might be massive guys or really strong women, but they still enjoy training. Like go and train with him, go and speak to him. You know, it is one of those things of, I think sometimes the thought of going to speak to people or asking people, if they're lifting that amount of weight, they've probably been training for a while to get to that point, and they've probably been in that position. So the gym shouldn't be that thing of it's only for a select group of people. It's for everyone. Going up and ask them, unless they're a complete tit, you know, who is going to be like, oh, don't speak to me, I'm in the middle of a session. Like, more often than not, it'll be like, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I once had, after lockdown, I was in training, and a guy walked across my platform, and I was like, I had to put the bar back. I was squatting, and I just had to be like, look, don't do that, because I'm more worried that if I drop this, say I fail the lift, I don't want it falling on you and injuring you. And the more important thing, I don't want to hurt myself.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Sometimes that's just a case of being like, you know, a little bit of gym etiquette. But
yeah,
at first I thought he looked a little bit like, because I was a little bit like, don't walk across my platform. But then afterwards I explained to him, and then after that he hadn't been into a gym before lockdown. He hadn't been in. So unless people get told, they don't know. So yeah, that's kind of lessons from my coaching on the gym floor. And you know, I think it comes across a lot better when, I know we touched on it a little bit before, but enjoying what you do. You know, if you like, yeah, just touching on the car analogy that you had. If you went to a mechanic and you dropped your car off and they were like, fucking hell, not another car.
Yeah.
Can't be bothered doing this. You'll be like, well, all right, well, I'm not coming to this garage again. Whereas if you come in and you've just finished one session, right, let's go. We're in this next session. Then it creates that atmosphere. And I know for me, having that buzz around coaching and training, like, I love that. I love going from sessions to sessions and seeing how people are doing. And you know, that's what keeps it going.
Awesome, mate. The last one of my main questions, as everyone I'm sure has realised, Steve's a very consistent bloke. What would your tips be for that, mate? So I see you as very consistent across the board. So we've talked about the podcast, 179 episodes, your own coaching career since leaving uni, and then as well your training and powerlifting, and how you've focused, you've stayed consistent over several years, you've kept doing it day in, day out, you've trusted the process. Share some wisdom on that, mate. How can we build consistency, and how can people build up that routine and discipline? What would your tips be?
Yeah, I think with that, for anything, is patience. Nothing ever happens overnight. Like, you don't just wake up on a morning and become shredded. You don't just wake up on a morning and, you know, all of a sudden can deadlift 300 kilos. It takes working, and I'm a big believer in you'll get out what you put in. If you put the effort in, you've got to meet it at least halfway. If you don't put any effort in, you're not going to get where you want to be. But also, you know, remembering that it takes that patience. And as well, I think the biggest thing for me, especially with, you know, Primal, doing my own, you know, coaching with, you know, Coach Cuthbert, with doing the podcast, I think it's also important to have time to enjoy things outside of training, outside of competing and all those sort of things. Because even though I got involved in strength training and coaching because I really enjoy it, I also like, you know, you'll relate to this, traveling. I also like going different places and having something a little bit different. You can still stay consistent with it, but it's just matching in where it is and being like, right, okay, I'm going away this week, so I'm going to tie that in with a little bit of a deload, and just managing things a little bit more. Whereas I must admit, I got to a point where I felt a little bit overwhelmed with everything, which is kind of probably, you know, for people listening, maybe learn from my mistakes a little bit. If you take on too much at once, I found that my coaching was suffering because I was feeling tired, because I was trying to get my sessions in, but then also because I was trying to push my sessions because I wasn't where I wanted to be. I was feeling tired from there, and then I was struggling with, you know, podcasts, because with time zones I'd be like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to do it at this time, so my day ended up getting longer. Whereas actually having it as, you know, right, okay, I'm going to set times where I'm going to do podcasts. I'm going to have set days where I'm training. It's not always the case. Sometimes I need to change it. And then I'm also going to set it. So like my day where I don't have to get up early, is Sundays. Sundays is my like, right, I'm going to go out with my missus. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go for a Sunday dinner or do nothing, which is, you know, sometimes the case. So that's the tip to keep me consistent, because then when I have podcasts lined up, when I, lucky enough to be a guest, on a podcast, it allows time to do that. And I think it stops you getting overwhelmed and allows you to be like, right, I'm doing this because I want to do it. And, being able to do something that you enjoy and be able to keep doing that. Like, I don't want to get to a point where I'm like, oh shit, I need to do something else, which I'm not going to enjoy as much. Why you keep doing it is because you do enjoy it. So yeah, I hope that's kind of all made sense. And whether that's
it is, I think for overwhelm, mate, something that I heard not long ago, which I think is a really good one, is they say the first sign of being overwhelmed is when a task or a request that someone has of you, of yourself, that you normally do no problem, starts to annoy you, or you start to get that like, oh fuck, why is someone asking us a question, or why is this, or you're getting frustrated with something. That can sometimes be a sign that you're getting overwhelmed, or you're taking too much on. And I think if you're aware of that and you can pause and say, is this the person, is this whatever's happened, or is it actually just that maybe I'm a little bit stressed today, or this has happened, and look at your whole life as opposed to just like what Steve mentioned there. It's not just your coaching or your career, it's your training, it's your relationships at home, it's everything else. And I think having that plan, and also I think a big thing there, which I'm a big fan of, is having some time to travel or some positives to look forward to, so that, whether it's, I'm a big fan, everyone knows I work with, there's always 12-week blocks. And if you base your life around 12-week blocks, you can do 4 in a year with a week off after each one. And that fits in perfectly. And then you've got that holiday or that end date. It's like, right, this is my first quarter. Then you have a week off the gym, either a deload or a holiday or a time away or whatever. And you can do that consistently. But just having these little checkpoints gives you something to look forward to, rather than the monotony of just, I'm just doing it for, I think that's when it can get boring.
That's the big thing, that monotony, because you sometimes feel as though, like, for most people, they might be working in an office or anything like that. So working 9 to 5, doing that all over again. You need something to look forward to. You need that little bit of a change. I think sometimes, I like that mindset of 12 weeks, have a week off, 12 weeks, have a week off. And then, you can change what you've done from those 12 weeks, maybe do something a little bit different. But yeah, I'm a big believer in that, because if not, like, yeah, if you get fed up with doing stuff, then that's where I end up, either getting out of shape, losing strength. And then actually it don't make you feel better from having a break from it. You just feel like, then it's that fear of, oh shit, I need to go back to the gym, rather than, right, well, I'm having a week off. I've put a load of work in. You're not going to get massively out of shape. You're not going to lose a lot of strength in a week. And then, right, let's get back. Let's get back at it.
Exactly. Right, mate, the last part, the legendary quickfire round.
Right.
Just the first 4 are pretty easy, just to warm you into it. And then the last 4, you can have a little bit of time to think more. Are you ready?
I think so.
Right, first one. Rugby or football?
Rugby.
I knew that would be the case for you. But I thought, well, just let everyone know that you're a rugby boy, right? From right at the end.
I just saw your face then, as if to be like, fucking hell, I can't believe he's that.
Train or coach?
Ooh, I'm gonna go coach.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted a more explanation.
No, that's good. The last 4, you need a little bit more explanation. Host or guest?
Host.
Yeah, you've done a lot of it, but I thought that would be a good one to ask you. Powerlifting or bodybuilding?
Powerlifting.
Powerlifting.
Do you know what? I was going to say bodybuilding. Then I'd be like, I'd love to be like that. But yeah, I think I've got the advantage of being a little bit strong, because, like, volume wise, to see what I'd have to do for bodybuilding.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ, I don't know what I'd have to do for that.
Yeah. Right, the last 4. You can have a little bit of a more of a think on this one, but you need to be honest. Sometimes people get worried about saying these things. Right, what is the worst place you have ever been?
The worst place I've ever been.
Anywhere in the world. Worst holiday, worst trip, worst place. You can give a reason why. You don't have to give a reason, but I need to know where it is.
So I'm gonna say hotels. And in terms of a place to visit, New York is awesome. I would recommend anyone go there.
Yeah.
However,
okay,
getting accommodation, right? We stayed just outside, on Times Square.
Right.
4 stories up, four stairs up. Carry our bags up. They had no lifts, so we had to carry the bags up. The room was smaller than what the room in now.
Yeah.
And the amount of noise that was there, like I don't think I slept for about 4 days. The whole time that we were there, and the bathroom flooded as well. But in terms of walking around New York, awesome.
Yeah.
Just don't stay.
I've been New York. I loved it. I loved New York when I was there, but I can imagine there's some dodgy hotels and places there as well. So what's the best place? The next one, Steve. What's the best place you've ever been?
Best place I've ever been would probably be Airlie Beach. Whoa, actually, I don't know. Florida was pretty good in terms of like a holiday. Me and my girlfriend spent about just under 4 weeks. And we had a car in Florida. Our uncle lent us a car. So I'll probably say St. Augustine in Florida.
Right.
Followed by Airlie Beach in Australia, in Queensland. And if you ever go to, all I can remember is, I think it's called the Elephant Bar. And it's cheap drinks, and I once got thrown out of there, but it was class. It was really, really good. So there's two. I can't pick between those two. But St. Augustine was really, really nice. Got some moonshine from there. Go there, and then Airlie Beach, just because it's not that far away from like Whitsundays, and all that, and the like Great Barrier Reef. And I just thought that was, I thought that was class.
Mint. Right, last two. What is the worst piece of advice you have ever been given?
The worst piece of advice I've ever been given. When I, as I was, graduating from like playing junior rugby and getting into like men's rugby, I was getting a little bit bigger the more I was strength training. But obviously, going to the gym, I'm trying to learn a little bit more. Some of the old boys in the club would say, you need to drink Guinness. It's full of vitamins. You need to eat. Like I can't remember. They were like not raw steak, but like really undercooked steak. And I remember I got my mum. I was like, "Oh, Mum, Phil at rugby. Like he used to play for Yorkshire in '80s. Obviously amateur, fueled by cups of teas and beer.
Yeah,
I need to have Guinness, and I need to have like rare steak." And I remember sat there having it, just being like, what is this? In fact, I think I had it on the Friday. Juniors usually play on the Sunday. So I didn't play on the Sunday. I'd been picked to play for the men's team.
Yeah.
And I had to walk in, and like I remember going to my coach, I was like, I said, just give me 5 minutes, I need to go to the loo. That Guinness and that steak was like, I'm not blaming my mom's cooking, but whatever it was, I was like, no way. I ended up just looking at some other stuff, read a little bit more, and be like, right, actually, I'm not going to have like some old school. Well, that's what he said he did. And you look at him, he's a big guy. He played for Yorkshire. He's a pretty good player. But that was the worst thing. But obviously, as like 16, 17-year-old, I'm like,
listen,
I'll do that. But I tried it. You can say you do it, but I wouldn't be doing that again.
And the other side of that, mate, the last question, what we're going to finish off on, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice I've ever been given. The first thing that comes to mind, I know we've spoken about coaching, is that whenever people are coming to the gym or coming to train with you, it's their time. They're taking time out of their day. They finished work or might be before work. They're coming to see you. Make them feel good, because they're coming to see you. It's not about you as a coach. It's not about what you've done today or anything like that. It's about making that person feel good and getting them to where they want to be. And it never really clicked at once, but I remember having a session and I was talking just about like how my day was or anything like that. And I could see that he was just stressed. And I ended up asking him questions. And do you know what? When he walked out, he was just like, do you know what? Thanks for that, mate. I really appreciated that. I know we talk about we spoke about powerlifting there and, grit and determination. But ultimately, like everyone's got always got other stuff going on. And I think just taking that into account, like no one ever comes in for, sometimes it's just a case of they're coming in because they want to enjoy it, and they're spending money with you. And I think since me taking that on board, yes, as much as I do all I want to learn as much as I can about coaching and getting people stronger and stuff. But sometimes it's just that human element of it, if you like, to be like, do you know what? I've made them have a good session, and then 9 times out of 10 they're going to come back in and smash the next session as well. So that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I've been given, and it served me well in terms of getting clients and working with people.
It's always an opportunity. I always think every time someone comes into a gym, it's always an opportunity to make their day better. Whether it's you yourself training, your training partner, or for those people out there to coach. And I think if you keep that in mind, whatever's happened, you can ask some questions, you can help them through the session, just be there for them. But it's always an opportunity to make someone's day better. And that was one of the things that I used to love when I had my gym as well. So I completely agree, mate. It's a really good one. Yeah. To finish off, mate, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you on social media and this incredibly consistent podcast that you've got going? Give them all the info that you need.
Thanks a lot for taking. I was going to say thanks a lot for taking time to jump on. I was hosting then. No, thanks a lot for asking me to jump on. I always feel as though one as a host of a podcast who would want to come and speak to me, but also who would want to listen to me speak. If you're interested in seeing anything that I put out there or looking at the podcast, I'll share it on my Instagram, which is just coach_Cuthbert. If you just want to have a look at the podcast and not look at what I'm putting out there, you can go to strength_chat on Instagram. I'm probably a lot more active on there. I do have Facebook and stuff, but I'm not really as active on that. The podcast is on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Just type in Coach Cuthbert Strength Chat and it'll come up. It's also on the website, just www.coachcuthbert.co.uk. As well as the podcast, there's like my own blog on there, coaching services, all that sort of stuff. And I'm pretty responsive to stuff. If you've dropped me a message, I'll get back to you either on that day or the next day. I hope there's people still listening at this point.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the word.